The little girl's eyes never left the plate. Across the polished dining room of Riverside Bistro, 6-year-old Amara pressed her face against her mother's shoulder, but her gaze stayed fixed on the table where another little girl sat. That other child, about the same age, was laughing as she picked up a golden chicken tender, dipping it into a small cup of honey mustard. She took a bite and Amara's throat moved in a swallow. The woman holding Amara clutched her daughter tighter. Her name was Brianna Mitchell, and she had exactly $12 in her wallet. She'd promised Amara they could sit in the fancy restaurant just for a little while, just to see what it felt like to be somewhere warm and beautiful. They'd ordered 2 glasses of water with lemon. That was all they could afford. Brianna's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed down Amara's worn blue jacket. The little girl hadn't complained once. Not about the cold walk from the bus stop. Not about the fact that they'd eaten oatmeal for breakfast and lunch. Not about the hole in her sneakers or the fact that her coat was 2 sizes too small. But her stomach had growled. Loud enough for the people at the next table to glance over. Brianna wanted to disappear. Instead, she whispered into her daughter's ear. "We'll go home soon, baby. I'll make us something good tonight, okay?" Amara nodded, but her eyes stayed on that chicken tender. Across the restaurant, seated at the best table by the window, Nathan Cross noticed. Nathan was not supposed to be the noticing type anymore. He was busy. Important. He owned this restaurant and 4 others across the state. He had meetings and investors and employees who depended on him. He had a daughter to raise alone. He had responsibilities that filled every hour of his day. But he'd learned a long time ago that hunger had a look. And that little girl was hungry. His own daughter, 7-year-old Leah, was happily working her way through her chicken tenders, completely unaware that someone was watching every bite with quiet longing. Leah wore a bright red dress with white flowers. Her hair was pulled back in 2 neat puffs adorned with matching red ribbons. She was loved, fed, safe. Nathan set down his fork. He looked at the woman holding the hungry child. She was young, maybe late 20s. Beautiful in a tired, wary way. Her clothes were clean but worn. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a green sweater that had seen better days and jeans that were faded at the knees. But it was her expression that stopped him. She looked afraid. Not of the restaurant or the people. She looked afraid of being seen. Nathan knew that feeling too. He excused himself from the table, kissing Leah on the forehead. "I'll be right back, princess. Keep eating." Leah nodded, already reaching for another chicken tender. Nathan walked slowly across the dining room, careful not to startle the woman and her child. As he approached, Brianna's body went rigid. She pulled Amara closer, her eyes darting toward the exit. "Excuse me," Nathan said gently, stopping a respectful distance away. "I'm Nathan. I own this restaurant." Brianna said nothing. Her jaw tightened. Nathan smiled, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. "I noticed your daughter looking at the food and I thought maybe I'd love to offer you both a meal. On the house. No strings. Just, I have a daughter too and I know kids get hungry." The words hung in the air. Brianna's eyes went cold. "No thank you," she said, her voice flat and final. Nathan blinked. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend. I just thought." "We don't need your help," Brianna said louder this time. Other diners turned to look. "We're fine." Amara looked up at her mother, confused. Her small hand reached toward the direction of Nathan's table, where Leah was still eating. "Mama?" "We're leaving," Brianna said, standing abruptly. She scooped Amara into her arms, even though the little girl was really too big to be carried. "Thank you for the water." She moved toward the door with quick, determined steps, her head down. Nathan stood frozen, bewildered. Around him, whispers started. His manager approached, concerned. "Mr. Cross, is everything all right?" Nathan didn't answer. He watched as the woman in the green sweater pushed through the glass doors and disappeared into the cold November evening, her daughter's face visible over her shoulder. That little girl was still looking back at the restaurant. Still hungry. Nathan felt something crack inside his chest. He didn't understand what had just happened. He'd only wanted to help. He'd offered a simple meal, nothing more. No conditions. No expectations. And she'd looked at him like he was dangerous. Nathan walked back to his table slowly. Leah looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. "Daddy, why did that lady leave so fast?" "I don't know, baby," Nathan said quietly, sitting down. His own meal sat in front of him, barely touched. Suddenly he wasn't hungry either. Through the window he could see the woman and her daughter at the bus stop across the street. The little girl was crying now and the mother was crouching down, holding her, rocking her gently. Nathan's hands curled into fists on the table. He remembered what it felt like to be that desperate, to be that scared. He remembered sleeping in his car with infant Leah in the back seat, wondering how he'd feed her the next day. He remembered the kindness of strangers that had saved them both. But he also saw something else in that woman's eyes. Not just pride. Not just stubbornness. Terror. She wasn't just refusing help. She was running from it. What? What had happened to make simple kindness feel like a threat? Leah tugged on his sleeve. Daddy, can we take some food to that little girl? Nathan looked at his daughter's sweet, innocent face. Leah had no idea what it meant to be hungry. She'd never known a day without safety, without warmth, without love. And that was exactly how Nathan wanted it. But that other little girl, the one at the bus stop, didn't have those things. Not today, princess, Nathan said softly. But maybe someday. Why not today? Because sometimes people need to be ready to receive help. And that mama isn't ready yet. Leah frowned, thinking hard. Was she scared of you? Out of the mouths of children. Yeah, baby, Nathan said, watching as the bus pulled up and the woman and child climbed aboard. I think she was. But you're not scary, Daddy. You're nice. Nathan smiled sadly. You know that. But she doesn't. The bus pulled away, taking the woman and her hungry daughter back to wherever they'd come from. Nathan didn't know where. Didn't know their names. Didn't know their story. But he knew that look in that little girl's eyes. And he knew he'd see them again. He didn't know how. Didn't know when. But he knew. Some connections aren't made by chance. They're made by necessity. By the universe pushing two people together until they finally stop running and start listening. Nathan picked up his fork, but the food tasted like nothing. Across the city, Brianna sat on the bus with Amara in her lap. Her daughter had cried herself to sleep, exhausted from hunger and disappointment. Brianna stared out the window, her own eyes burning with unshed tears. She'd seen the confusion in that man's face. The genuine hurt when she'd refused him. But he didn't understand. He couldn't understand. 4 years ago, another wealthy man had offered her help. Had smiled just like that. Had said, no strings, just like that. And then he'd slowly, carefully taken everything from her. Her dignity. Her freedom. Her sense of self. She'd barely escaped with Amara. Since then, Brianna had learned one unshakable truth. Rich men don't help for free. They help because they want something. They help because it makes them feel powerful. They help because it gives them control. And Brianna would rather starve than be controlled again. She kissed the top of Amara's head, breathing in the scent of her daughter's hair. I'm sorry, baby, she whispered. I'm so sorry. But she wasn't sorry enough to go back. She couldn't. Even if it meant her daughter went to bed hungry again. Even if it meant refusing the very kindness they desperately needed. Because some lessons are learned too well. Some scars go too deep. And some walls are built too high to ever come down. Or so Brianna believed. What she didn't know, as the bus carried them toward their tiny one-room apartment, was that walls can be patient. Walls can wait. And sometimes the right person doesn't try to break them down. They simply stand outside day after day, proving that it's safe to open the door. Have you ever refused help because you were afraid of what it might cost? Have you ever seen someone suffering but felt powerless to reach them? This story is about what happens when two wounded people finally find the courage to trust again. If this beginning moved you, please subscribe and let me know in the comments. What would you have done in Brianna's place? Would you have accepted the meal, or would fear have won? 4 years earlier, Brianna had believed in kindness. She'd had no reason not to. She'd grown up in a loving home with parents who taught her that good people existed. That help offered freely was help worth taking. That the world, despite its hardships, had more light than darkness. Then her husband died. Daniel Mitchell had been her high school sweetheart. They'd married young, had Amara 2 years later, and built a simple but happy life together. Daniel worked construction. Brianna worked part-time at a grocery store while caring for their daughter. Money was tight, but love was abundant. Then came the accident. A collapsed scaffolding at a job site. Daniel was only 30 years old. The life insurance payout was small. Funeral costs ate most of it. Brianna was left with a 2-year-old daughter, a pile of medical bills, and no idea how to survive. That's when Gerald Patterson entered her life. She'd met him at Daniel's funeral. He was a friend of Daniel's former boss, a successful real estate developer who'd come to pay respects. He was older, maybe 50, with silver hair and expensive suits. He'd approached Brianna after the service, his expression full of sympathy. I'm so sorry for your loss, he'd said. Daniel was a good man. Brianna had nodded, numb with grief. Listen, Gerald continued, his voice gentle. I know this is a terrible time. But I want you to know that if you need anything at all, you can call me. He'd handed her a business card. Help with bills. Job opportunities. Whatever you need. No strings attached. I just believe in taking care of people who've been dealt a bad hand. Brianna had been so grateful she'd cried. At first, Gerald's help seemed like a miracle. He'd paid her rent for 2 months while she looked for work. He'd connected her with a better-paying job at an office downtown. He'd even sent over groceries once, claiming he'd accidentally ordered too much from a delivery service. Brianna had felt blessed. She told her parents about this generous man who was helping her get back on her feet. They'd been relieved that someone was looking out for their daughter and granddaughter. But then, slowly things changed. Gerald started calling more often, checking in, asking about her day, where she'd been, who she'd seen. At first it seemed like friendly concern. Then he started showing up. At her apartment. At her workplace. Always with some excuse. He'd brought coffee. He wanted to make sure she was okay. He was in the neighborhood. Brianna felt uncomfortable but didn't know how to say so. After all, he'd been so kind. How could she tell him to back off when he'd done so much for her? Then came the gifts. Expensive gifts. A new coat. Jewelry. A tablet computer, for Amara's education. Brianna tried to refuse, but Gerald would get hurt. Offended. He'd remind her of everything he'd done, how he'd only wanted to help, how he didn't understand why she was being ungrateful. So she'd accepted. And with each gift the debt grew heavier. 6 months after Daniel's funeral, Gerald told Brianna he had feelings for her. She'd been horrified. She tried to let him down gently, explaining that she wasn't ready, that she was still grieving, that she saw him only as a friend. Gerald's face had hardened. After everything I've done for you, he'd said quietly. After I kept you from being homeless? After I made sure your daughter had food and clothes? Brianna felt ice in her stomach. I never asked for those things, she'd said carefully. You offered. You said no strings. And there aren't any strings, Gerald replied, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. But I thought you were smarter than this, Brianna. I thought you understood how the world works. People who help each other, they take care of each other. In all ways. The implication was clear. Brianna had tried to distance herself after that. She'd stopped answering his calls. She'd looked for a new apartment. That's when Gerald showed her exactly how much power he had. Her job offer was suddenly rescinded. The manager, apologetic, explained that they'd received concerning information about her reliability. When Brianna demanded to know what information, the manager wouldn't say. Her new apartment application was denied. And the next one. And the one after that. Every landlord suddenly found a reason not to rent to her. Her bank account was flagged for suspicious activity. It took weeks to resolve, weeks during which she couldn't access her own money. Gerald never explicitly admitted to any of it. But every time something went wrong, he'd call with a solution. He knew someone who could help with the bank situation. He had a rental property she could move into. He could get her job back. All she had to do was be reasonable. Be grateful. Be his. Brianna realized she was trapped. She tried going to the police, but what could she report? That a man was being helpful? That her job loss and housing problems might be connected to someone with money and influence? The officers had been polite but clear. Without proof, there was nothing they could do. For 8 months, Brianna lived in a nightmare. Gerald controlled where she lived, where she worked, who she talked to. He never raised his hand to her, but he didn't need to. The threat was always implicit. Step out of line and life would get harder. For her and for Amara. He'd visit her apartment whenever he wanted. He'd sit in her living room, playing with Amara, acting like a benevolent uncle. The little girl didn't understand. She thought Mr. Gerald was nice because he brought her toys. Brianna felt sick every time he touched her daughter's hair. She'd made plans to run. Multiple times. But Gerald always seemed to know. He'd show up right when she was packing. He'd mention casually that he hoped she wasn't thinking of leaving, because that would be such a shame. Such a waste of everything he'd invested in her. You're like family to me now, he'd say, smiling. And family stays together. Brianna had felt like she was drowning. Then, one night, opportunity arrived in the form of her cousin visiting from another state. Her cousin Vanessa had driven down for a surprise visit. She'd taken one look at Brianna and known something was wrong. Over hushed conversations while Amara slept, Brianna told her everything. Vanessa didn't wait. She packed Brianna and Amara into her car that same night, while Gerald was at some business dinner. They drove 8 hours straight across state lines, to a city where Gerald's influence couldn't reach. Vanessa let them stay with her for 3 months, until Brianna found work and a small apartment of her own. But the damage was done. Brianna had learned that kindness was a trap. That generosity was manipulation. That men with money and power didn't help out of goodness. They helped because they wanted to own you. So when Nathan Cross approached her in that restaurant, offering a free meal with genuine concern in his eyes, Brianna didn't see kindness. She saw Gerald Patterson. She saw a well-dressed man with resources and influence. She saw someone who wanted to fix her problems, which meant he'd soon believe he owned her solutions. She saw danger. And she ran. Now, for years later, sitting in her tiny apartment while Amara slept in the only bed they shared, Brianna stared at the $12 left in her wallet. Tomorrow was rent day. She was $150 short. Her job at the call center paid barely enough to cover expenses. She'd applied for 3 promotions and been passed over each time. She worked doubles when she could, but daycare costs ate any extra income. She was drowning again. Just in a different way. Brianna looked at her sleeping daughter. Amara's face was peaceful now, her stomach still mostly empty but her exhaustion winning out over hunger. A good mother would have accepted that meal. A good mother would have put her daughter's needs above her own fear. But Brianna couldn't. The memory of Gerald's smile, so similar to Nathan Cross's smile, paralyzed her. What if it happened again? What if she accepted help and ended up trapped once more, only this time with no cousin to rescue her? What if Amara grew attached to this man, this restaurant owner, and he used that attachment as leverage? No. Better to be poor and free than fed and owned. Brianna lay down beside her daughter, pulling the thin blanket over them both. Tomorrow she'd figure something out. She always did. She'd sell something. Pawn her wedding ring maybe. It was the only thing of value she had left, but Amara's hunger mattered more than sentiment. Daniel would understand. As Brianna closed her eyes, she tried to ignore the memory of genuine confusion on Nathan Cross's face. Tried to ignore the possibility that maybe, just maybe, not all kindness was poison. But she couldn't take that chance. Not again. Never again. Nathan Cross hadn't always been successful. 10 years ago he'd been sleeping in his car. Not by choice. Not as some adventure or temporary setback. He'd been homeless. Broke. Desperate. And he'd had a 6-month-old daughter depending on him. Leah's mother had left when their baby was 2 weeks old. She'd looked at Nathan, looked at their tiny apartment and mounting bills, and decided she couldn't do it. She'd walked out with nothing but her purse and phone, and Nathan never saw her again. No note. No forwarding address. No custody battle. She'd simply erased herself from their lives. Nathan had tried to make it work. He'd been working as a line cook at a diner, pulling double shifts while paying a neighbor to watch Leah. But the neighbor moved away suddenly, and childcare costs at a proper facility were more than his entire paycheck. He'd tried bringing Leah to work, keeping her in a carrier in the back. His boss had been sympathetic at first, but when health inspectors started raising questions, Nathan was let go. After that, everything collapsed fast. Eviction. No savings. No family nearby to help. For 3 months, Nathan lived in his beat-up Honda Civic with his infant daughter. He'd park in different spots each night to avoid police attention. He'd feed Leah with formula he bought with the few dollars he earned doing odd jobs. He'd change her diapers in gas station bathrooms. And he'd wondered every single day if he was failing her. If maybe he should give her up for adoption. Let her go to a family who could actually provide for her. Who could give her warmth and safety and a future. But every time he looked at Leah's face he couldn't do it. She was all he had. And he was all she had. So he kept fighting. One night, Nathan had been parked outside a closed shopping center, trying to get Leah to sleep. She'd been crying for hours and he didn't know why. He'd fed her. Changed her. Rocked her. Nothing worked. He'd been on the verge of tears himself when someone knocked on his window. Nathan had jumped, terrified it was police. But when he looked up, he saw an older woman, maybe in her 60s, holding a thermos and a bag. He'd rolled down the window cautiously. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman had said gently. "But I work overnight at the grocery store across the way and I've seen your car here a few nights now. I thought you might be hungry." Nathan's throat had closed up. The woman handed him the thermos. "It's soup. Still hot. And there are sandwiches in the bag. And some baby formula if you need it." Nathan had stared at her, unable to speak. "No strings," the woman continued. "I've been where you are. Long time ago but I remember. It gets better. I promise it gets better." Then she'd walked away back toward the grocery store before Nathan could even thank her. He'd sat there in his car holding that thermos and cried. Not from despair. From relief. From the overwhelming realization that he wasn't invisible, that someone had seen him and hadn't judged, hadn't called social services, hadn't treated him like a failure, had just helped. That woman's kindness became a turning point. Nathan used the food to keep going another week. And during that week he landed a job at a catering company. It didn't pay much, but it was enough to rent a room in a shared house. Enough to start climbing out of the hole. Over the next decade, Nathan worked brutally hard. He moved from catering to restaurant management. He saved every dollar. He studied business at night while Leah slept. He took risks, made investments, opened his first small restaurant. And he never forgot that woman with the thermos. He never learned her name. Never saw her again after that night. But her kindness became the foundation of everything he built. When his first restaurant succeeded, Nathan made a policy. Any person who came in hungry would be fed. No questions. No judgment. No publicity stunts. His staff thought he was crazy at first. But Nathan insisted. Someone fed me when I had nothing, he'd explained. Now I can return that gift. Over the years, as his restaurant empire grew, Nathan stayed true to that principle. He hired people others wouldn't give a chance to. He paid fair wages. He created a culture of respect. And he taught Leah as she grew about gratitude and responsibility. We were lucky, he'd tell her. We got help when we needed it. Now we help others. Leah understood. Even at 7 years old, she had her father's generous heart. So when Nathan had seen that little girl staring at Leah's plate, hunger written all over her face, he hadn't hesitated. He'd done what that woman had done for him. Offered help. No strings. But he'd been rejected. Coldly. Fearfully. And it haunted him. For 3 days after the incident, Nathan couldn't stop thinking about that woman and her daughter. He'd replayed the interaction in his mind, trying to figure out what he'd done wrong. His manager, Todd, had tried to reassure him. Some people are too proud to accept help, boss. You did the right thing by offering. But Nathan didn't think it was pride he'd seen in that woman's eyes. It was something deeper. Something darker. On the 4th day, Nathan saw them again. He'd been driving Leah to her ballet class when he spotted them at the public library. The woman was holding her daughter's hand as they climbed the steps. The little girl was wearing the same blue jacket. Nathan didn't approach. He just watched as they went inside. Leah noticed. Daddy, isn't that the little girl from the restaurant? Yeah, baby. Can we say hi? Nathan hesitated. Then he made a decision. How about we go to the library after your ballet class? We can pick out some new books. Leah lit up. She loved books. 2 hours later, they returned to the library. Nathan let Leah lead the way to the children's section, and sure enough, the woman and her daughter were there. The little girl was sitting on the floor, surrounded by picture books, her face filled with joy. The woman sat beside her, reading aloud quietly. Nathan kept his distance. He pretended to browse the shelves while Leah picked out books nearby. But he watched. He saw how gently the mother interacted with her daughter. How she smiled when the little girl laughed at a funny picture. How she smoothed the child's hair with obvious love. This wasn't a neglectful parent. This was someone who cared deeply but was clearly struggling. After about 20 minutes, Leah wandered closer to where the little girl sat. The two children made eye contact. I like that book, Leah said shyly, pointing to one of the picture books. It's funny. The other girl smiled. It is funny. I'm Leah. What's your name? Amara. Nathan saw the mother tense, her eyes darting toward him. But he made no move to approach. He simply gave a small nod of acknowledgement and returned his attention to the bookshelf. The girls chatted for a few minutes about their favorite stories. Then Leah said something that made Nathan's heart swell with pride. Do you want to come to the park with us? My daddy's taking me after this. Amara's face lit up. Can I, Mama? The woman Brianna looked torn. Nathan could see the internal battle playing out. Her daughter wanted this so badly. But accepting meant interacting with him again. Finally, Brianna spoke. We can't today, baby. We have to go home soon. Amara's face fell. Leah, ever persistent, tried again. Maybe another day? Brianna didn't answer. She simply stood, gathering the books. Come on, Amara. Time to check out. As they walked away, Amara looked back at Leah with obvious disappointment. Leah came back to Nathan, confused. Why won't she let them be friends? Nathan knelt down to his daughter's level. Remember I told you that sometimes people need time? That Mama is still scared. Of what? I don't know, baby. But whatever it is, it's not about you. You were very kind to Amara. That's what matters. Leah nodded, but she looked sad. Nathan felt it too. That ache of wanting to help and being unable to. But he'd learned patience in his years of struggle. He'd learned that trust can't be forced. So he didn't follow them. Didn't push. He simply made a mental note. The library. Thursday afternoons. If they kept coming back, he'd keep showing up. Not to pressure. Not to force connection. Just to be there. To show, through quiet consistency, that not all help comes with hooks. That some people remember what it's like to need kindness. And that kindness, real kindness, doesn't demand anything in return. Just waits. Over the next 3 weeks, Nathan and Brianna kept crossing paths. The library. The park. The grocery store on Saturday mornings. At first, Brianna thought it was coincidence. But as it kept happening, she began to suspect otherwise. Yet Nathan never approached her directly. He'd nod politely if their eyes met. He'd make sure Leah said hello to Amara when the girls noticed each other. But he never pushed. Never tried to start a conversation. Never offered help again. It was confusing. Brianna had expected him to persist. That's what Gerald had done. Showing up everywhere, always with some excuse, always inserting himself into her life until she couldn't escape. But Nathan didn't insert himself. He simply existed in the same spaces. And somehow that felt different. At the library, he'd sit across the room while Leah and Amara occasionally played near each other. The girls were becoming tentative friends despite their mother's distance. They'd share books, compare favorite characters, giggle over silly pictures. At the park, Nathan would push Leah on the swings while Brianna watched Amara play on the slide. Sometimes their daughters would join forces on the jungle gym, working together to cross the monkey bars. At the grocery store, Nathan would be in the produce section while Brianna carefully compared prices in the canned goods aisle. He never tried to pay for her groceries. Never offered to carry her bags. Never did anything that would make her feel obligated. He just existed nearby. And slowly, very slowly, Brianna's fear began to shift into curiosity. Who was this man? One Saturday, while the girls played together at the park, Brianna overheard Nathan talking to another parent. "Your restaurant's doing great," the other parent said. "My wife and I went there last week. Amazing food." "Thanks," Nathan replied. "We've been blessed. I heard you started from nothing." "That true?" Nathan paused, pushing Leah higher on the swing. "Yeah, it is. That's impressive. Not many people pull themselves up like that." "I had help," Nathan said quietly. "Someone helped me when I needed it most. I'm just trying to pass that forward." The other parent laughed. "You're too humble. Most people wouldn't give away as many free meals as you do." "It's not giving away," Nathan corrected gently. "It's remembering where I came from." Brianna, sitting on a nearby bench, felt something shift in her chest. He'd been homeless? This successful restaurant owner, this man who clearly had money and stability, had been where she was now? It didn't fit the narrative she'd built in her head. The next time she saw Nathan at the library, Brianna found herself watching him more closely. He was patient with Leah. Never snapped at her. When Leah knocked over a display of books by accident, Nathan calmly helped her pick them up, talking to her softly about being more careful. He was respectful to the library staff. Returned books to the proper shelves. Held doors for people behind him. He was normal. Not predatory. Not controlling. Just a single dad doing his best. Brianna felt her walls crack just a little. One afternoon, during a particularly cold day in December, Amara's cough got worse. Brianna had been fighting off panic for days. The cough had started mild, but it was getting deeper. Wetter. Amara's forehead felt warm. But Brianna couldn't afford to miss work. And she definitely couldn't afford a doctor visit. Her health insurance through the call center was terrible, with a deductible so high it might as well not exist. So she'd been giving Amara over-the-counter cold medicine and hoping it would pass. It didn't pass. At the library that Thursday, Amara was listless. She sat in Brianna's lap instead of looking at books. Her breathing sounded labored. Leah noticed immediately. "Amara, are you okay?" Amara didn't answer, just coughed weakly. Leah ran to Nathan, pulling his arm. "Daddy, Amara's sick." Nathan looked over. Even from across the room, he could see that the little girl wasn't just tired. She was ill. He approached carefully, stopping a respectful distance away. "Excuse me. I don't mean to intrude, but your daughter doesn't sound good. Has she seen a doctor?" Brianna's defenses went up immediately. "She's fine. It's just a cold." "That doesn't sound like just a cold," Nathan said gently. "That sounds like it might be her chest." "We're fine," Brianna repeated, but her voice cracked slightly. Nathan hesitated. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled out his phone, opened a medical app, and turned the screen toward Brianna without getting closer. This is a telemedicine service. You can talk to a nurse for free right now. No appointment needed. No insurance required. I'm not trying to push. I remember what it's like to not be able to afford a doctor. This helped me when Leah was little. Brianna stared at the phone screen, then at Nathan's face. He looked genuinely concerned. Not pushy. Not manipulative. Just worried about a sick kid. You don't have to, Nathan added quickly. I'm just offering information. That's all. Brianna's hands trembled. Amara coughed again, a rattling sound that made Brianna's stomach turn. What if this was pneumonia? What if waiting made it worse? What if her fear cost her daughter her health? Brianna's voice came out as a whisper. Can you send me the link? Nathan blinked, surprised. Then he nodded quickly. Of course. What's your number? Brianna recited it, feeling like she was stepping off a cliff. Nathan sent the link. The first consultation is free. If they think she needs to be seen in person, there's a list of low-cost clinics. No judgment. No strings. Just help. He started to walk away, giving her space. Why do you keep showing up? Brianna called after him, her voice stronger now. Nathan turned back. Because I remember being hungry. Being scared. Having a sick kid and no money. Someone helped me once. No strings. No expectations. They just help. And it saved us. What if I never accept? Brianna asked, her tone almost challenging. What if I keep saying no? Nathan shrugged. Then you keep saying no. But I'll still be here. Not to pressure you. Just so you know that if you ever do need something, there's someone who understands. Then he walked back to Leah, who was watching the whole exchange with wide eyes. Brianna sat there, holding her sick daughter, staring at her phone. The link Nathan sent was real. A legitimate telemedicine service. She clicked it. Within 10 minutes she was connected to a nurse. The nurse listened to Amara's symptoms, asked detailed questions, and gently suggested that Amara needed to be seen in person. She might have a respiratory infection requiring antibiotics. The nurse provided a list of community health centers that worked on sliding scale fees. Brianna thanked her and ended the call. Then she looked across the library at Nathan, who was reading to Leah, completely focused on his daughter. He'd helped her. Given her information and then walked away. No demands. No expectations. Just help. Maybe, just maybe, Brianna thought, not everyone was Gerald Patterson. Maybe some people really did remember what struggle felt like. And maybe, just maybe, accepting help didn't always mean giving up control. It was a terrifying thought. But as Amara coughed again, Brianna realized she didn't have the luxury of fear anymore. Her daughter needed care. And pride, justified or not, wasn't worth Amara's health. That night, Brianna took Amara to one of the community clinics. The doctor confirmed a respiratory infection and prescribed antibiotics. The total cost, even with the sliding scale, was $80. Brianna paid it with money she'd been saving for rent. Now she was $230 short. The eviction notice would come any day. But Amara's breathing was already improving. And that, Brianna decided, was worth the risk. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday. Brianna found it taped to her apartment door when she got home from work. Amara was feeling better, thank goodness, but the antibiotics had wiped out the last of Brianna's financial cushion. She had until Friday to pay the outstanding rent or vacate the premises. Brianna sat on the floor of her tiny apartment, the notice in her hands, and felt her carefully constructed life crumbling around her. She'd done everything right. Worked hard. Stayed out of debt. Kept her head down. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. The next day, Wednesday, Brianna went to her shift at the call center with her stomach in knots. She'd inquired about picking up overtime, but there wasn't any available. She'd already been working every hour they'd give her. During her lunch break, Brianna sat in her car and cried. Not loud, dramatic sobs. Just silent tears that wouldn't stop. She was out of options. Out of plans. Out of hope. That evening, against her better judgment, Brianna took Amara to the library. She needed the distraction. Needed to be somewhere warm and safe for a few hours before facing the reality of homelessness. Nathan was there, as he'd been every Thursday for weeks now. When he saw Brianna, he gave his usual polite nod. But then he looked closer and saw something on her face. Defeat. Leah ran up to Amara immediately. You look better. Your cough is gone. Amara managed a small smile. The medicine helped. Leah beamed. My daddy gives people medicine sometimes when they need it. Did he give you medicine? He told my mama where to get it, Amara said softly. Leah looked proud as if her father had personally cured Amara. Nathan approached, more cautiously than usual. I'm glad she's feeling better. Brianna nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Nathan hesitated, then said gently, Are you okay? That simple question broke something in Brianna. Her eyes filled with tears again. Nathan looked alarmed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm getting evicted, Brianna said suddenly, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. I'm $230 short on rent and I have until Friday and I don't know what to do. She immediately regretted saying it. What was she doing? Why was she telling this stranger her problems? But Nathan didn't look smug or triumphant. He looked genuinely distressed. I'm so sorry, he said quietly. That's awful. Brianna wiped her eyes quickly. I shouldn't have said anything. Forget it. No, Nathan said firmly. Don't apologize. You're allowed to be struggling. I'm not looking for a handout, Brianna said defensively. I know, Nathan replied. But if you were, there's no shame in that either. Brianna looked at him, searching his face for any sign of manipulation. Any hint that he was about to make demands in exchange for help. She saw none. Just empathy. What if I lent you the money? Nathan said carefully. Not a gift. A loan. You pay me back when you can, no interest, no timeline. Just so you and your daughter have a place to stay. Brianna's instinct was to refuse. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to say no. But Amara was standing right there, holding Leah's hand, smiling for the first time in days. If Brianna refused, they'd be homeless by Monday. Amara would be sleeping in the car just like Nathan and Leah had done years ago. Was her fear worth that? Was her trauma more important than her daughter's safety? Why? Brianna whispered. Why do you keep trying to help me? Nathan thought about it. Then he said, when I was living in my car with Leah, a woman gave me soup and sandwiches. She didn't know me, didn't judge me, just help. I never got to thank her. Never even learned her name. But that kindness saved us. So now, when I see someone struggling, I remember that woman. And I try to be what she was for me. Brianna felt something crack wide open in her chest. What if I can't pay you back? She asked, her voice barely audible. Then you can't, Nathan said simply. And that's okay. You don't know me. I know you love your daughter. I know you work hard. I know you're scared but still showing up. That's enough. Brianna closed her eyes. She thought of Gerald Patterson. Of the way he'd trapped her with generosity. Of the nightmare that had followed. But then she thought of her daughter. Of Amara's bright eyes and infectious laugh. Of the way Amara deserved stability and safety. And she made a choice. A choice to trust. A choice to risk. A choice to believe that maybe, just maybe, not all kindness was poison. Okay, Brianna whispered. Okay. Nathan exhaled, looking relieved. Okay. Do you have Venmo or? I can give you my account information, Brianna said, her voice shaking. But I need to pay you back. I need to. Or We'll figure it out, Nathan interrupted gently. One step at a time. 20 minutes later, sitting on a bench outside the library while the girls played, Brianna provided her banking information. Nathan transferred $230 without hesitation. Brianna stared at her phone, watching the money appear in her account. No strings attached. Yet. Thank you, she said, her throat tight. I'll pay you back. I promise. I believe you, Nathan said. But there's no rush. Seriously. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Brianna asked the question that had been haunting her. What do you want from me? Nathan looked confused. What do you mean? Everyone wants something, Brianna said flatly. Nobody helps for free. So what is it you want? Nathan's expression shifted. Understanding dawned. Someone hurt you. Someone helped you and then used it against you. Brianna didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. Nathan nodded slowly. I don't want anything from you. I promise. No expectations. No conditions. You don't owe me anything except the money, and even that's flexible. I don't want to see another kid sleeping in a car if I can prevent it. Brianna wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. But trust was hard. Trust was terrifying. I should go, Brianna said abruptly, standing. Amara. Time to leave. Amara ran over reluctantly. But Mama? Now, baby. As they walked away, Nathan called after her. Same time next week? At the library? Brianna didn't answer. But deep down she knew she'd come back. Because for the first time in 4 years, Someone had helped her without immediately demanding payment. And even though her fear was screaming that the other shoe would drop soon, a tiny part of her heart whispered a different truth. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time kindness was just kindness. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face the world alone anymore. Sometimes the hardest thing in the world is accepting help from someone who expects nothing in return. Have you ever been in a situation where pride or fear kept you from receiving the kindness you desperately needed? If this story is touching your heart, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you tell Brianna if you could talk to her right now? The call came at 2 in the morning. Brianna jerked awake to the sound of Amara crying. Not the normal fussy crying of a child who'd had a bad dream. This was different. Panicked. Painful. Brianna rushed to their shared bed and found Amara burning with fever. The antibiotics should have worked. The respiratory infection should have been gone. But Amara's breathing was labored again, worse than before. Her skin was hot to the touch. She was whimpering, clutching her chest. Brianna's nursing instincts from the brief CNA training she'd taken years ago kicked in. This wasn't just a setback. This was serious. She needed to get Amara to an emergency room. No. But Brianna didn't have a car. She'd sold it 6 months ago to make rent. She grabbed her phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely dial 911. 911, what's your emergency? My daughter, she can't breathe. She has a fever. She needs help. The dispatcher stayed calm, asking questions. How old was the child? What were her symptoms? Was she conscious? An ambulance is on the way, the dispatcher assured her. Stay on the line with me. But ambulances cost money. Money Brianna didn't have. Still, Amara's health was more important than debt. Brianna threw on clothes over her pajamas, grabbed her bag and held Amara close while they waited. The ambulance arrived within 7 minutes. The paramedics were efficient and kind. They checked Amara's vitals, oxygen levels, and immediately decided transport was necessary. At the hospital, everything moved fast. Amara was admitted. Chest x-rays were ordered. And 4 was started. Doctors and nurses moved around with practiced urgency. Brianna answered questions in a daze. Medical history. Allergies. Insurance information. I don't have insurance, Brianna admitted quietly. I'll pay in installments. Whatever it takes. The intake nurse nodded without judgment. We'll work it out. Right now, let's focus on your daughter. By 4 in the morning, the diagnosis was clear. Pneumonia. The initial respiratory infection hadn't fully cleared, and it had progressed despite the antibiotics. Amara would need to stay hospitalized for at least 2 days, maybe more. Stronger medications. Monitoring. Brianna signed all the paperwork without reading it, her hands still trembling. When they finally moved Amara to a room, Brianna collapsed into the chair beside the hospital bed. Amara was sleeping now, the oxygen and medication already making her breathing easier. Brianna put her head in her hands and let herself cry. She cried from fear. From exhaustion. From the crushing weight of responsibility. She cried because she was alone. Because Amara's father was gone. Because her parents lived 3 states away and couldn't afford to come help. Because Vanessa, her cousin who'd rescued her once, was dealing with her own family crisis. She cried because she had no one. Then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Nathan. Leah mentioned at school today that Amara wasn't feeling well and you were worried. Just wanted to check in. Is everything okay? Brianna stared at the message. How did he have her number? Then she remembered. She'd given it to him at the library so he could send the telemedicine app link. She should ignore the text. Should maintain boundaries. But she was so tired. So scared. And so desperately alone. Her fingers moved across the screen before she could stop them. We're at the hospital. Pneumonia. She's stable now but scared. The response came immediately. Which hospital? Brianna hesitated. Then typed the name. 15 minutes later, there was a soft knock on the hospital room door. Brianna looked up, startled. Nathan stood in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. He was wearing sweatpants and a green hoodie, his hair messy, clearly having thrown on whatever clothes were nearby. I know you didn't ask me to come, he said quietly, glancing at sleeping Amara. But I remember what it's like to be in a hospital alone with a sick kid. It's awful. So I brought coffee and I can sit in the waiting room if you want or leave entirely, but I wanted you to know you're not alone. Brianna should have told him to leave. Should have maintained her walls. But she was so tired of being strong. You can stay, she whispered. Nathan handed her a coffee and sat in the chair on the opposite side of the room, keeping a respectful distance. They sat in silence for a long time, The only sounds the beeping of monitors and Amara's steadier breathing. Finally, Brianna spoke. "Why did you really come?" Nathan took a sip of his coffee. "When Leah was 18 months old, she got a stomach virus that turned into severe dehydration. We ended up in the ER. I was terrified. I had no money, no insurance, and I thought I was going to lose her. A nurse stayed with me the whole night even after her shift ended. She didn't have to. She just stayed. I never forgot that." "So you're paying it forward?" Brianna said. "I'm being human," Nathan corrected gently. "That's all." Brianna felt her defenses crumbling. "Someone helped me once too. 4 years ago. After my husband died." She hadn't meant to say it. But the exhaustion and fear had stripped away her filters. Nathan didn't respond, just listened. So Brianna kept talking. She told him about Daniel. About Gerald Patterson. About the trap of generosity that had become a prison. About the escape in the middle of the night. About the 4 years of fear that followed. She told him why she'd refused his help at the restaurant. Why she'd been terrified of him. Why she still was a little even now. Nathan listened to all of it without interrupting. When she finished, his face was grave. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "I'm sorry that happened to you. And I'm sorry that my trying to help reminded you of him." "You're nothing like him," Brianna admitted. "I can see that now. But fear doesn't always make sense." "No," Nathan agreed. "It doesn't." They sat in silence again, but it was different now. Comfortable. "Sure. Can I tell you something?" Nathan asked eventually. Brianna nodded. "I was angry at Leah's mother for a long time. For leaving. For choosing herself over our daughter. But eventually I realized she was probably terrified too. Maybe she had her own Gerald Patterson. Maybe she'd been hurt in ways I didn't understand. I still don't agree with what she did, but I stopped being angry. Because fear makes people do things that don't make sense. Even to themselves." Brianna absorbed that. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know that I get it. I get why you ran from me. Why you're still cautious. And I don't take it personally. I just hope that someday when you're ready, you'll let yourself believe that some people really do help because they remember being helped. Not because they want something in return." Brianna felt tears sliding down her face again. "What if I'm never ready?" "Then you're never ready," Nathan said simply. "And that's okay too." They talked until dawn. About their children. About their struggles. About the moments that had broken them and the moments that had saved them. Brianna learned that Nathan's restaurant success hadn't come easy. He'd failed twice before. Lost money. Made mistakes. But he'd kept trying because giving up wasn't an option with Leah depending on him. Nathan learned that Brianna had wanted to be a nurse before Daniel died. That she still dreamed about it sometimes, but the cost of school made it impossible. He learned that she loved old movies. That she sang to Amara every night. That her favorite color was green. She learned that he'd taught himself to cook by watching videos online. That Leah was scared of thunderstorms. That his favorite thing in the world was making people smile with his food. They learned each other. Not as potential romantic partners. Not as benefactor and charity case. Just as two humans who'd survived hard things and were still standing. When morning came and Amara woke up, she saw Nathan and smiled weakly. "Hi." "Hi, sweetheart," Nathan said gently. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," Amara admitted. "That's okay. You rest. Your mama's right here." Amara looked at Brianna. "Is Mr. Nathan our friend now?" Brianna glanced at Nathan, then back at her daughter. "Yeah, baby. I think he is." Nathan smiled, and for the first time since they'd met, Brianna smiled back. A real smile. Not guarded. Not afraid. Just grateful. Amara came home from the hospital 3 days later, much improved but still weak. The medical bills were staggering, but the hospital's financial assistance program covered most of it. Brianna would be making small payments for years, but it was manageable. What surprised her was the care package waiting on her doorstep when they arrived home. Soup. Bread. Fruit. Juice boxes. A soft blanket. Children's books. All packed neatly in a box with a note. For recovery. No need to respond. Just rest. Nathan and Leah. Brianna stood there holding the note, Amara leaning against her side, and felt something shift permanently in her heart. This wasn't manipulation. This was just kindness. Over the next 2 weeks, Nathan checked in occasionally via text. Never intrusive. Never demanding. "How's Amara feeling?" Leah wanted me to ask if Amara liked the books. "Let me know if you need anything." Brianna always responded briefly but warmly. "She's getting stronger. She loved the books. Thank you. We're okay." She still hadn't paid him back the rent money. She tried to bring it up once, but Nathan had waved it off. When you can, he'd said. Not before. By the third week, Amara was well enough to go back to daycare. Brianna returned to work, falling back into her exhausting routine. But something had changed. She no longer felt completely alone. One Saturday, Nathan texted with an unusual request. I know this is random, but I'm short-staffed at the restaurant today. Any chance you'd be willing to help out for a few hours? I'll pay you fairly, and Leah can watch Amara in the office area. Totally understand if you can't. Brianna stared at the message. A job offer. Not charity. Or. She texted back. What time? That afternoon, Brianna showed up at Riverside Bistro wearing her nicest jeans and a clean red sweater. Amara held her hand, looking around with wide eyes. Nathan greeted them warmly. Thank you so much for coming. One of my servers called in sick, and we have a full house today. He led them to a back office where Leah was already waiting, surrounded by coloring books and toys. Amara can hang out here with Leah, Nathan explained. They'll be safe and I'll check on them every 15 minutes. Brianna hesitated. She didn't like leaving Amara, even in a safe place. But Amara was already running to Leah, excited to play. I've done this with Leah since she was little, Nathan assured Brianna. The door locks from the inside, there's a bathroom right here, and they know to come get me if they need anything. Brianna took a breath and nodded. Okay. Nathan smiled. Great. Let me show you the ropes. For the next 5 hours, Brianna worked as a server. Nathan patiently taught her the ordering system, introduced her to the kitchen staff, and checked in regularly to make sure she was comfortable. The work was hard. Her feet ached. But it felt good. She was earning money. Real money. Not a handout. Not a loan. Wages she'd worked for. The customers were kind. The kitchen staff joked with her. Nathan's manager, Todd, thanked her multiple times for saving the day. When her shift ended, Nathan handed her an envelope with cash. Hourly rate plus tips. You did great. Brianna looked at the money. It was more than she'd make in 2 shifts at the call center. Thank you, she said sincerely. No thank you, Nathan replied. You were a natural. If you're ever interested in picking up more shifts, I'd love to have you on the team. Brianna blinked. Seriously? Seriously? I know you have your call center job, but if you want supplemental income, the offer stands. Flexible hours. Fair pay. No strings. There it was again. No strings. Brianna was beginning to believe him. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. That night, lying in bed with Amara asleep beside her, Brianna did the math. If she worked at the restaurant 3 evenings a week, she could quit the call center. She'd make more money with better hours. She could spend more time with Amara. She could finally start saving for nursing school. It felt too good to be true. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't. The next Monday, Brianna gave her 2 weeks' notice at the call center. Her supervisor was surprised. Where are you going? A restaurant, Brianna said simply. Better pay. Better hours. Good for you, the supervisor said, and she actually meant it. 2 weeks later, Brianna started working regular shifts at Riverside Bistro. Nathan kept his word. Fair pay. Flexible scheduling. Respect. The other staff welcomed her warmly. She learned everyone's names. Shared jokes. Felt like part of a team. Amara and Leah became inseparable. Whenever Brianna worked, the girls would hang out in the office, coloring and playing games. Sometimes Nathan would bring them into the kitchen to make their own mini pizzas, which they loved. Slowly, over weeks and then months, Brianna's life stabilized. She paid off the hospital bills faster than expected. She started saving money. She enrolled in a single online nursing class just to test the waters. And she started trusting Nathan. Not romantically. Not yet. But as a friend. As someone who genuinely wanted good things for her without demanding anything in return. One evening, after a busy dinner shift, Nathan and Brianna sat in the empty dining room while the kitchen staff cleaned up. The girls were asleep in the office, curled up on a makeshift bed of cushions. You've been amazing, Nathan said, sipping water. The customers love you. The staff loves you. I'm really glad you took the job. Thank you for offering it, Brianna said. You've changed my life. You know that, right? Nathan looked uncomfortable with the praise. You changed your own life. I just provided an opportunity. You provided more than that, Brianna said quietly. You provided hope. I'd forgotten what that felt like. They sat in companionable silence. Then Nathan said, Can I ask you something? Sure. That guy, Gerald. Did you ever see him again? After you left. Brianna tensed. No. I've been careful. Changed my phone number. Moved states. I don't think he even knows where I am. Good, Nathan said firmly. Because if he ever shows up, you tell me. Immediately. You're not alone anymore. Brianna felt warmth spread through her chest. Thank you. I mean it, Nathan insisted. You and Amara are part of this family now. The restaurant family. We take care of each other. Brianna believed him. For the first time in 4 years, she truly believed that someone had her back. And it felt like coming home. 3 months into working at Riverside Bistro, Brianna felt like a different person. She was smiling more. Sleeping better. Amara was thriving in a better daycare that Brianna could now afford. They'd even moved to a nicer apartment, still small but clean and safe. Life was good. Then Gerald Patterson walked into the restaurant. Brianna was taking an order at table 6 when she saw him. Her blood turned to ice. He was older now, grayer, but unmistakably him. Wearing an expensive suit. Looking around the dining room like he owned the place. Their eyes met across the room. Gerald's face lit up with recognition. Then something darker. Satisfaction. Brianna's hands started shaking. The pen she was holding fell to the floor. The customer she was serving looked concerned. Are you all right? Excuse me, Brianna stammered. She walked quickly toward the kitchen, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Nathan was at the pass checking orders. He took one look at Brianna's face and immediately stepped away from the line. What's wrong? He's here, Brianna whispered, her voice panicked. Gerald. He's here. Nathan's expression hardened. Where? Table by the window. Maroon tie. Nathan looked through the kitchen door window. He saw Gerald clearly, now being seated by the hostess. Okay, Nathan said calmly. Go to the office. Lock the door. Stay with the girls. I'll handle this. He'll cause a scene, Brianna said, trembling. He'll? He won't, Nathan said firmly. I promise. Go. Now. Brianna fled to the office, her legs barely supporting her. She locked the door behind her and sank to the floor, trying to breathe. Amara and Leah looked up from their coloring, confused. Mama? Amara asked. What's wrong? Nothing, baby, Brianna lied. Just needed a break. Out in the dining room, Nathan approached Gerald's table with a calm, professional smile. Good evening. Welcome to Riverside Bistro. I'm Nathan, the owner. Can I get you started with something to drink? Gerald looked up, assessing Nathan with cold eyes. Just water. And I'd like Brianna to be my server. I'm sorry, but Brianna's shift just ended, Nathan said smoothly. I'd be happy to serve you myself. I saw her not 2 minutes ago, Gerald said, his tone taking on an edge. She looked upset. I'm an old friend. I'd like to speak with her. I'm afraid that's not possible, Nathan replied, his voice still polite but firm. As I said, her shift is over. Gerald leaned back in his chair, studying Nathan. You're protecting her. I'm running my restaurant, Nathan corrected. Now, would you like to order or would you prefer to leave? Gerald's smile turned cold. Do you know who I am? No, Nathan said honestly. And I don't care. I'm a real estate developer. I own properties all over this city. I could make things very difficult for your business. Nathan's expression didn't change. Is that a threat? It's a statement of fact. Nathan pulled out his phone and started recording. Please repeat that. I'd like to have it on record. Gerald's eyes narrowed. You're making a mistake. No, Nathan said calmly. You are. You see, I know men like you. Men who use money and power to hurt people. Men who think they can control others through intimidation. I know you because I've had to deal with guys like you my whole career. And here's the thing, they always underestimate people like me. People who've survived worse than you can dish out. Gerald stood abruptly. I'll be back. And you'll be asked to leave again, Nathan said. Brianna doesn't work for you. She doesn't owe you. And she doesn't want to see you. If you show up here again, I'll file a restraining order on her behalf. Do we understand each other? Gerald's face flushed with anger. But he saw the other diners watching. Saw Nathan's calm, unshakable demeanor. Saw that he wouldn't win this confrontation. This isn't over, Gerald hissed. Yes, Nathan said quietly. It is. Gerald stormed out of the restaurant, slamming the door behind him. Nathan exhaled slowly, his hands shaking slightly now that the confrontation was over. Todd, the manager, appeared at his side. Boss, you okay? Yeah, Nathan said. Make sure the staff knows if that man comes back they call me immediately. And they don't seat him. Got it? Nathan walked to the office and knocked softly. Brianna? It's me. He's gone. The door unlocked. Brianna stood there, tears streaming down her face. He left? She asked, her voice small. He left, Nathan confirmed. And if he comes back, I'll handle it again. You're safe here. Brianna collapsed against Nathan's chest, sobbing. He held her carefully, respectfully, while Amara and Leah watched with worried faces. I thought I'd gotten away, Brianna cried. I thought I was safe. You are safe, Nathan said firmly. He doesn't control you anymore. He can't hurt you. You don't know what he's capable of. Maybe not, Nathan admitted. But he doesn't know what I'm capable of either. And I promise you, Brianna, I will not let him hurt you or Amara. Not while I'm breathing. Brianna pulled back, looking at Nathan's face. She saw determination. Protectiveness. Not possessiveness. This wasn't about control. This was about genuine care. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Because you matter, Nathan said simply. You and Amara both. You're family now. And family protects each other. In that moment, Brianna realized something terrifying and wonderful at the same time. She was falling in love with Nathan Cross. Not because he'd saved her. Not because he'd given her a job or paid her rent. But because he'd shown her, again and again, that kindness without strings actually existed. That good men were real. That she deserved to be protected, respected, and valued. And that love didn't have to be a trap. Could be a refuge. After Gerald's appearance, Nathan hired a security consultant to review the restaurant's safety protocols. He also helped Brianna file a formal restraining order against Gerald, using the recording from that night as evidence. Gerald didn't appear again. But the restraining order was approved, giving Brianna legal protection. He can't come near you or Amara, the lawyer explained. If he violates it, he'll be arrested. Brianna felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time in 4 years, she felt legally protected. Over the following weeks, Nathan and Brianna grew closer. Not because Nathan pushed. He didn't. He remained respectful, patient, and careful not to make Brianna feel pressured. But their conversations grew deeper. Their friendship grew stronger. Leah and Amara had started calling themselves sisters. They did everything together. Sleepovers, birthday parties, school projects. And slowly, Brianna realized that her feelings for Nathan had grown beyond friendship. She was terrified. What if she was wrong about him? What if he turned out to be like Gerald after all? But every time that fear rose up, Nathan proved her wrong. When Brianna mentioned she was struggling with an online nursing class, Nathan didn't offer to pay for a tutor. Instead, he simply asked, "What can I do to help? Would extra study time help? I can watch Amara more if you need quiet time." When Brianna accidentally broke an expensive dish at the restaurant, Nathan didn't get angry. He just laughed and said, "Happens to everyone. Don't worry about it." When Brianna got sick with the flu, Nathan brought soup to her apartment. He left it at the door, texted her that it was there, and didn't expect to be invited in. He respected her boundaries while still showing he cared. It was everything Gerald hadn't been. One evening, after closing the restaurant, Nathan and Brianna sat in the empty dining room again. It had become their routine. Talking after the rush while the girls slept in the office. "Can I tell you something?" Brianna asked, her voice nervous. "Always," Nathan said. "I think I'm falling for you." Nathan's expression softened. "I think I'm falling for you too. But I'm scared," Brianna admitted. "What if I'm wrong about you? What if this all falls apart?" "Then it falls apart," Nathan said gently. "But Brianna, I can't prove I'm trustworthy with words. I can only prove it with time. With consistency. With respect. And I'll keep doing that whether we're friends or something more." "What if I'm not ready?" Brianna asked. "Then you're not ready," Nathan said. "And that's okay. I'm not going anywhere." Brianna felt tears prick her eyes. "You're really okay with waiting?" "I've waited 10 years to find someone who gets it," Nathan said. "Who understands what it's like to struggle. Who loves their kid the way I love Leah. Who's strong and scared and brave all at once. I can wait as long as you need." Brianna reached across the table and took Nathan's hand. "I don't want to wait anymore." Nathan smiled, his eyes bright. "You sure?" "I'm terrified," Brianna admitted. "But I'm sure." "Then we'll be terrified together," Nathan said. They sat there, holding hands, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Later, when they told the girls, Leah squealed with excitement. "Does this mean Amara's really my sister now?" "We're figuring it out," Nathan said, laughing. "But yeah, something like that." Amara looked at Brianna. Is Mr. Nathan going to be my dad? Brianna's breath caught. She looked at Nathan, who was watching her carefully. Someday maybe, Brianna said softly. If that's okay with you. It's okay with me, Amara said happily. He makes you smile, Mama? And that, Brianna realized, was what mattered most. Nathan made her smile. Made her feel safe. Made her believe in love again. Not because he'd rescued her, but because he'd respected her. He'd waited while she healed. He'd been patient while she learned to trust. He'd never demanded. Never manipulated. Never controlled. He just loved her. Quietly. Steadily. Respectfully. And that made all the difference. 1 year later. Brianna stood in the newly expanded Riverside Bistro, looking around with pride. The restaurant had grown significantly. They'd opened a second location across town. And Brianna was now co-owner, having invested her saved earnings and partnered with Nathan in the business. She'd also finished her nursing prerequisites and been accepted into an accelerated nursing program. Between the restaurant income and Nathan's support, she could finally pursue her dream. Amara and Leah, now 8 years old, were inseparable. They went to the same school, had the same friends, called each other sisters without hesitation. And Brianna and Nathan? They were planning a wedding. Nothing elaborate. Just a small ceremony in the restaurant's garden space, surrounded by family and the staff who'd become like family. Brianna's parents had flown in to meet Nathan. They'd been wary at first, protective after what Gerald had done. But Nathan had won them over quickly with his genuine kindness and obvious love for their daughter and granddaughter. He's a good man, Brianna's father had said, hugging Nathan. Take care of my girls. I will, Nathan promised. Always. The night before the wedding, Brianna and Nathan sat in their usual spot in the empty dining room. The girls were having a sleepover at a friend's house, leaving the adults with rare quiet time. Are you nervous? Nathan asked. No, Brianna said honestly. I've never been more sure of anything. Not even a little scared? Terrified, Brianna admitted, laughing. But it's the good kind of scared. The excited kind. Nathan took her hand. I want you to know something. I'm not going to stop proving myself to you. I'm going to keep showing you, every single day, that you made the right choice. That love can be safe. That you deserve everything good. Brianna felt tears slide down her cheeks. You've already shown me that. I'll keep showing you anyway, Nathan said, kissing her hand. The wedding was perfect. Simple, joyful, and filled with love. Amara and Leah served as flower girls, wearing matching bright blue dresses they'd picked out together. They scattered petals with great seriousness, then dissolved into giggles halfway down the aisle. Brianna wore a simple cream dress. Nathan wore a navy suit. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising partnership, respect, and endless patience with each other. When the officiant pronounced them married, both girls cheered loudly. At the reception held in the restaurant they'd built together, people gave toasts. Todd, the manager, told stories about how Brianna had transformed the restaurant with her warmth and work ethic. Brianna's cousin Vanessa cried happy tears, remembering the night she'd driven Brianna to safety and how far they'd both come. Nathan's friends from his homeless days, men he'd stayed in touch with over the years, raised glasses to the man who'd never forgotten where he came from. And Leah, with Amara beside her, gave the last toast. My daddy always told me that family isn't just the people you're born with, Leah said seriously. It's the people who show up when things are hard. Who help even when it's not easy. Who love you even when you're scared. Brianna and Amara showed up. They're family now. Forever. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Later, dancing under string lights in the garden, Nathan pulled Brianna close. Happy? He asked. So happy, Brianna said. I never thought I'd feel this way again. After Daniel died, after Gerald, I thought maybe I'd used up my chance at love. Love isn't finite, Nathan said gently. It doesn't run out. It just finds you when you're ready to receive it. When did you get so wise? Brianna teased. I had a very good teacher, Nathan said, gesturing to where an older woman stood near the dessert table. Brianna looked confused. Who? The woman who gave me soup when I was homeless, Nathan explained. I found her last year. Tracked her down through the grocery store. Her name is Patricia. She's retired now. You invited her? Brianna gasped. Of course, Nathan said. She's the reason we're all here. Her kindness saved me. Which eventually brought me to you. Brianna looked at Patricia, who waved cheerfully, completely unaware of the emotional conversation happening across the garden. I want to thank her, Brianna said. You can, Nathan said. But she'll probably tell you she didn't do anything special. That's how people like her are. They help because it's right, not because they want recognition. Brianna understood that perfectly. Because that's how Nathan had helped her. How he'd approached her scared, hungry daughter in a restaurant a year ago. How he'd kept showing up, kept being patient, kept proving that kindness without strings really existed. As the night wore on, Brianna watched her new blended family. Watched Amara and Leah dancing with abandon. Watched Nathan laughing with guests. Watched their found family, the staff and friends who'd supported them, celebrating their happiness. This was what healing looked like. What trust rebuilt looked like. What love, real love looked like. Not perfect. Not without fear. But real. Solid. Safe. Brianna had spent 4 years running from help, convinced that generosity was manipulation. That kindness was a trap. But Nathan had taught her differently. Not through grand gestures or overwhelming gifts. Through patience. Through respect. Through consistent, quiet kindness that asked for nothing in return. He'd shown her that not all men were Gerald Patterson. That some men remembered hunger and chose to feed others. That some people helped because they'd been helped, not because they wanted control. He'd shown her that walls could come down. That hearts could heal. That trust could be rebuilt one small moment at a time. And most importantly, he'd shown her that she was worthy of love. Real, unconditional, respectful love. As the wedding reception wound down, Brianna found herself standing alone in the garden for a moment, looking up at the stars. She thought about Daniel, hoping he'd approve of the life she'd built, the man she'd chosen to help raise their daughter. She thought about Gerald and realized she no longer felt fear when she thought of him. Just pity. Pity for a man so broken he had to control others to feel powerful. She thought about the scared, struggling woman she'd been a year ago. The woman who'd refused a simple meal out of fear. And she smiled. Because that woman had been brave enough to take a chance. To accept help. To trust again. And it had saved her. Nathan found her in the garden. You okay? Perfect, Brianna said, taking his hand. Absolutely perfect. Together they walked back to their daughters, their friends, their found family. Back to the life they'd built together. A life based on mutual respect, shared struggle, and the understanding that kindness, real kindness, changes everything. The little girl who'd once stared hungrily at a plate of chicken tenders was now laughing, well-fed, safe, and loved. The man who'd once slept in his car with his infant daughter now owned a thriving business and had a family that chose him every day. And the woman who'd been too afraid to accept help had learned that opening her heart, despite the risk, was the bravest thing she'd ever done. Love had found them. Not because they were perfect. Not because they had no scars. But because they'd been willing to try. Willing to trust. Willing to believe that sometimes kindness is just kindness. And sometimes that's enough to change everything.